I want to paint a really vivid picture for you. Just uh, imagine it's a hot, sticky summer night in 1974.
Okay, setting the scene.
Yeah. You're in the Esplanade area of central Calcutta. You've just stepped out of a late movie. You're totally exhausted, and you quickly realize the buses have stopped running.
Oh, the worst feeling.
The absolute worst.
Yeah.
So you've got this 9-kilometer walk home ahead of you, and you start trudging through the dark back lanes of the city. Everything is mostly quiet.
Right.
You pass the occasional closed pan shop, and you hear the muffled sounds of a high-end club that's still serving drinks. And then, as you are walking past the back of one of these clubs, right past the service entrance, you are stopped dead in your tracks.
What happens?
Blaring out into the humid alleyway is this sprawling, hypnotic blues rock jam. And you hear a voice singing, "Sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine, leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall." And the song's supposed to be maybe 3 minutes long, but the band is just stretching it out, bending the notes, playing with the timing like true jazz veterans. You find yourself completely rooted to the spot, listening to a sound that feels like it belongs in a London underground club, not a Calcutta alleyway.
It's the kind of moment that feels almost cinematic,
Exactly.
stumbling upon something so raw and frankly so out of place in the middle of a quiet, humid night.
And that exact moment, which was experienced by a writer named Tapen Sinha, is our entry point today. In this deep dive, we are taking you on a journey into the hidden, electrifying world of Kolkata's 1970s independent rock scene.
It's a wild era.
It really is. We are pulling directly from excerpts of Sinha's fascinating piece, Monkey Song of Dilip Balakrishnan. And our mission today is to explore the tragic brilliance of an unsung musical genius, decode the dark, twisting allegory hidden in one of his greatest songs, and examine the heavy price of artistic authenticity.
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. It is a narrative that pulls together so many contrasting threads. I mean, you have questions of cultural identity, the mechanics of rebellion, and the psychological toll of just pouring your soul out on a stage night after night in a city that was going through its own massive cultural shifts.
Right, because to figure out how we get this incredibly dense blues rock sound echoing down a Kolkata alleyway, we have to look at the guy standing at the microphone that night in 1974.
We do.
Based on Tapen Sinha's account, if you walked around to the front of that club, the visual would be incredibly deceptive. The band making this massive sound is called High, and the front man,
Yeah.
he looks exactly like your standard, unassuming, scrawny, bearded Bengali intellectual, like the kind of guy you'd expect to find chain-smoking and intensely debating philosophy at the famous Indian coffee house.
Right, that classic archetype.
But the twist here is that he wasn't Bengali at all.
What's fascinating here is that he was actually a Madrasi named Dilip Balakrishnan, and the contrast goes much deeper than just his ethnic background versus his appearance, Well, he wasn't a bohemian street poet living hand to mouth. He was actually a corporate executive.
Wait, really? A corporate executive?
Yeah. He worked at the Metal Box Company, having been brought in by a prominent business figure named Bhaskar Mitter. The sources note he felt much more at home in the upscale, posh neighborhood of Alipur than he ever did in Mylapore.
Okay, so he is effectively an indie rock Bruce Wayne.
That is a great way to put it.
Right. He puts on the corporate suit during the daylight hours, navigates boardrooms and profit margins, and then by night, he transforms into this countercultural rock god sweating it out in the clubs of Park Street.
Exactly.
But that duality raises a major question. How does someone so entrenched in the corporate world, someone who completely bypasses the traditional starving artist archetype, how do they end up defining the underground indie music scene of the City of Joy?
His outsider status is very likely the exact mechanism that fueled his originality.
Oh, that makes sense.
Because when you don't naturally fit into the existing subcultures, when you are a South Indian corporate executive masquerading as a bearded Bengali rocker, you aren't bound by the unwritten rules of those subcultures.
Right, you're already breaking the mold.
Exactly. You are forced to build your own framework. If you look at Dilip's musical roots, he was consistently pushing past the boundaries of whatever scene he was in. His journey started in the mid-1960s with a popular pop-oriented band called the Cavaliers.
Okay.
And pop was lucrative, but it clearly didn't satisfy his creative appetite.
He was looking for a heavier, more complex sound to match whatever he was observing in the world around him.
Precisely. So by 1969, he pivots hard into progressive rock. He forms a band called Great Bear alongside musicians Nandan Bakshi and Lou Hilt.
Great Bear.
Yeah, and Great Bear is frequently cited as Kolkata's very first progressive rock outfit. They were taking on these massive, ambitious covers of bands like Led Zeppelin, Cream, and artists like Steve Winwood.
Wow, so really heavy technical stuff.
The technical proficiency required to play that kind of music is just staggering. So by the time he forms High in 1974, he isn't starting from scratch. He is bringing the accumulated musical weight of progressive rock, blending it with the discipline of his corporate life, and funneling all of that into a completely original project.
And having that highly disciplined progressive mentality translates directly to the original songwriting that stopped our moviegoer in the alleyway. Because Dilip wasn't just interesting on paper, he had a profoundly gifted and often very dark perspective on the world.
He really did.
The song they were playing is called the Monkey Song. On the surface, it sounds whimsical, almost like a nursery rhyme. The lyrics talk about Monkey Joe swinging on a chain in the pouring rain. But the sources make it clear this isn't a playful children's tune.
No, not at all. The source text actually describes it as a blues rock eulogy. When you analyze the specific lyrics, that whimsical facade falls away completely. Monkey Joe is a stand-in for the captive artist. The chain he's swinging on isn't literal metal. It represents the contract. It's the industry machinery that ties the artist to the venue and the schedule.
Yeah.
And perhaps the most striking metaphor is the cage the monkey is put into. The cage is the stage itself. The song mentions a bad man who broke the monkey's heart and put him to shame, which functions as a clear allegory for the exploitative industry figures, managers, club owners, promoters, who pulled the strings behind the scenes.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the idea that the stage is a cage challenges a massive cultural assumption we have.
It definitely does.
We tend to romanticize live music. We think of the stage as the ultimate place of freedom, this sacred space where the artist is finally unbound from society and can connect purely with the crowd.
That's the myth, right?
But if we follow Dilip's logic, if the stage is actually an enclosure, doesn't that make the audience the zookeepers? We aren't setting them free by buying a ticket. We're the ones keeping them locked in for our amusement.
That is a highly uncomfortable conclusion, and the song actively pushes the listener toward it. It points a chilling finger directly at the audience's complicity.
Yeah.
Consider the recurring chorus you mentioned earlier, sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine. The bottle of wine represents a cheap, temporary transaction. The audience isn't there to connect with the artist's soul or to understand their pain. They are there to be entertained in exchange for the price of a drink.
They just want to toss peanuts into the enclosure and watch the monkey do a flip.
Exactly. The lyrics explicitly state that inside the monkey's heart, there was a burning, raging storm to be free. Yet the audience is entirely indifferent to that storm.
They don't care at all.
Not at all. They are perfectly content to remain detached from the performer's internal suffering as long as the band keeps playing the hits and the wine keeps flowing. It forces you to look at the psychology of the performer-audience divide. The artist is bleeding on stage and the crowd is just tapping their feet.
That paints a pretty grim picture of the audience. And it gets darker, because the song takes a very literal, violently destructive turn. There's a line that says, "Monkey tried to mainline, he took an overdose."
Right?
At this point, we have to transition from the lyrical allegory to the real-world trajectory of Dilip and his band, because the boundary between the art and the artist started to collapse.
It did, and the language he uses in that specific lyric is deliberate and historically loaded. The word monkey itself isn't just about a performing animal.
What else does it mean?
Well, in the context of the 1960s and 70s rock scene, having a monkey on your back was widespread slang for a severe heroin or drug addiction.
Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought of that layer.
Yeah, the source draws direct parallels to figures like Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, and Jimi Hendrix. These were artists who were crushed by the immense pressure of their own cages and turned to substances to cope. The fact that Dilip named his band High was not a subtle metaphor.
It was a literal description of their lifestyle.
Yeah.
The sources confirmed Dilip and his bandmates were heavily into ganja and harder drugs as well. Yeah, it was a heavy scene.
It makes me think of drug use in the music industry as a sort of payday loan for creativity. You are borrowing massive amounts of emotional intensity and energy to survive that demanding stage environment. But you are borrowing it at a predatory, devastating interest rate that eventually bankrupts your physical body.
That's a really powerful analogy.
Because the heartbreaking reality of this story is that Dilip Balakrishnan passed away when he was just 40 years old in 1990. His bandmate, the drummer Nandan Bakshi, attributes his early death directly to those bad habits. It forces you to wonder if Dilip wrote the Monkey Song purely as an observation of the industry around him, or if he was writing a real-time diary of a cage he knew he couldn't escape.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, whether it was observation or autobiography, the song was undeniably prophetic.
It speaks to the destructive myth of the tortured artist that society often perpetuates, the expectation that profound talent requires profound suffering. And the ending of the song demonstrates that Dilip understood exactly where that path invariably leads. It is violent and final. He sings, "Monkey's dead and gone now. They put a bullet in his head."
Man, a bullet in the head is a pretty stark escalation from just being locked in a cage.
It is. It functions as an industry metaphor. It illustrates how the machine discards artists the moment they're no longer profitable, no longer manageable, or simply no longer physically capable of performing.
Just tossed aside.
Exactly. The industry extracts every ounce of value from the performer, and when the addiction or the exhaustion becomes too much of a liability, they eliminate the problem and move on to the next act.
The lingering detail that sticks with me is the final cry in the lyrics. Even after the monkey is dead, the singer says, "I can still see him crying out at me, 'Won't you get me out of here?'"
Which implies that even in death, the image of the performer remains trapped.
Oh, it's dark.
They become frozen in the public consciousness as the tragic rock star, forever swinging on that chain. They never actually find true peace because the cultural machinery won't let them. The records keep playing, the myth continues to be sold, and we demand they entertain us from beyond the grave.
That forces you to look at a classic rock playlist a little differently. But, you know, as heavy as that reality is, we cannot simply leave Dilip's story at his tragic end.
Definitely not.
Summarizing his life merely as a cautionary tale does a massive disservice to the mechanics of his actual genius. To truly understand why his loss at age 40 left such a massive void in Indian music, we have to look at how he actually navigated that 1970s club circuit. Because he wasn't just passively suffering in the cage, he was actively fighting the bars.
The tragedy only resonates so deeply because the talent was so immense and his approach was so uncompromising.
Let's examine what actually made High stand out on Park Street. In the 1970s, those Kolkata nightclubs were almost entirely dominated by cover bands.
Right, that was the standard.
The crowds, and more importantly, the club owners paying the bills, wanted familiar foot-tapping hits. They wanted pleasant background music to accompany their dinner and drinks. Dilip entirely refused to play that game. He insisted on performing his own original material.
Which was a massive financial and professional risk. You are essentially telling a venue that you won't give them the reliable product they are paying for. You are demanding the audience engage with something unfamiliar.
And his originals were not simple, catchy pop tunes. He was bringing heavy, complex literature into crowded, smoky bars.
Yeah, his literary influences were deep.
The sources highlight a piece he composed when he was just 21 years old called The White Knight's Tale, which was directly inspired by the writings of Lewis Carroll. He was taking these dense literary concepts and setting them to music. And the mechanics of how he created that music are baffling.
Oh, it's incredible.
He had zero formal musical training, yet he was weaving intricate, sophisticated jazz-influenced chords into heavy rock structures.
Right, and to achieve that without formal training means he was relying purely on an exceptional oral intuition. He was likely learning by ear, absorbing imported vinyl records, and using a process of intense trial and error to figure out how to physically voice those complex jazz chords on a guitar or a keyboard.
Just figuring it out on his own?
Yeah. He was a multi-instrumentalist handling rhythm guitar, keyboards, and harmonica. But it was his voice and his lyrical phrasing that led his bandmate to describe him as a singer-songwriter of international standards.
To illustrate just how fiercely protective he was of that vision, there is this incredible anecdote in the source material involving Satyajit Ray.
Oh, I love this story.
For context, Satyajit Ray is an absolute titan of Indian cinema and culture. He represents the absolute pinnacle of mainstream, respectable Bengali high culture. One night, Ray comes to the club to listen to Dilip sing. After the set, Ray approaches him and suggests that Dilip should change his musical direction.
The underlying tension there is fascinating. You have a master of Indian cinema asking a pioneer of the underground English rock scene to alter his art, likely to make it more palatable or culturally aligned with mainstream sensibilities.
So what does this all mean? How does Dilip respond? He just looks at this cultural icon and says, "Sorry, Mr. Ray, No can do.
It's so bold.
I mean, the sheer audacity of that interaction is amazing. It would be like a local underground indie filmmaker today having someone like Martin Scorsese walk into their tiny basement screening, tell them to change their script, and the filmmaker just saying, yeah, thanks for the note, Marty, but I'm going to pass.
It really highlights Dilip's unwavering commitment to his own authenticity.
Absolutely.
He wasn't going to soften his sound for the club owners. He wasn't going to change it for the audience. And he certainly wasn't going to alter it for a legendary filmmaker.
No way.
And that fierce refusal to compromise is the precise reason his legacy has endured long past his death. The respect he commanded extended far beyond the audience. It was deeply rooted among his peers. The band High maintained a dedicated cult following for nearly 2 decades. When Dilip passed away in 1990, the bond between those musicians was so profound that the remaining members disbanded immediately out of sheer respect.
They just stopped playing.
They understood that Dilip was the creative engine. Without his specific vision, the band simply ceased to exist.
It's a striking tribute. They didn't try to replace him and keep cashing the checks.
No, and that integrity has allowed his music to find new life in the digital age. Even though the recordings were often made on primitive 4-track recorders, the raw quality of the songs still resonates. The Saragama label recognized this and released several of High's archival recordings in 2009.
Oh, that's great.
And in 2013, the band was posthumously awarded the Re-Rock Award for lifetime contribution to Indian rock.
The momentum continues to build, too. Just a few years ago in 2021, to mark the 50th anniversary of that Lewis Carroll-inspired White Knight's Tale, remastered versions of his early work were released to the public.
It's wonderful to see. Today, his influence is literally painted onto the city itself. You can walk down the streets of Kolkata and see Dilip Balakrishnan remembered in street murals, notably one at Ballygunge Place showing him alongside Nandan Badji.
Wow.
He is firmly cemented as a defining hero of the Woodstock generation of Indian rock. He represents an entire era when Kolkata was the undisputed beating heart of the country's indie music scene.
We've taken you from a sweaty alleyway in 1974, listening to a band blow the roof off a kitchen, through the dark realities of the music industry's cages, and into a masterclass in unyielding artistic integrity. Dilip Balakrishnan may have written about feeling like a captive monkey swinging on a chain, but the art he created while inside that cage was nothing short of revolutionary.
It really was.
So for you listening, the next time you put on your headphones, or the next time you stand in a crowd watching a brilliant piece of live music, I want you to remember the monkey on the wall. Look past the stage lights and the spectacle and try to see the unseen chains the artist might be wearing, just to provide you with a few minutes of entertainment.
And this raises an important question for you to mull over as we finish up.
What's that?
Dilip wrote about the physical cages of the 1970s club circuit, the contracts, the venues, the grueling schedules. But in today's era of endless digital content, viral fame, and 247 social media, where we demand constant, intimate access to artists' private lives, have the cages actually disappeared? Or have the bars just become invisible? Are we as an audience still just trading an artist's soul for our own modern bottle of wine?
Man, it certainly makes you evaluate how we consume the art we claim to love. Thank you so much for hanging out and joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep listening closely to the music, and maybe next time you're walking home late on a hot summer night, take the back lanes. You never know what kind of genius you might hear blaring out of a kitchen door.
Lord, I woke up this morning and I fell out of bed. My mind was so troubled, rock and roll in my head. Sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine. Leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall. Lord, I needed some action. Then I saw Monkey Joe swinging on a chain and the bowling way, singing a song on freedom. Sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine. Leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall. Monkey's heart was broken. That man, I put him to shame. Rock and roll had no meaning, boy, when there was this body in chains. Now, sing, sing, sing for And he knew that his days are come and gone. But in his heart there was this burning, raging storm to be free. Monkey tried to mainline. He took an overdose. He ran up on stage, they put him in a cage, but they just couldn't cage his soul. Oh, sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine. Leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall. Monkey's dead and gone now. The Buddha did his head, but I can still see him crying out of me. Would you get me out of here? Oh, sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine. Leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall. Sing, sing, sing for a bottle of wine. Set your soul on fire. Leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall. Sing, 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 sing for a bottle of wine. Leave it to the monkey sitting on the wall.